All this is Dr. Mobeen Sayed from drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. So the discussion today, I'm going to keep it short because today is Christmas Eve. So happy Christmas Eve to everyone who is celebrating, and happy Christmas to you as well for tomorrow. So let's start our discussion. There are two basic pieces of news that I wanted to discuss. Number one, the Zoe app for the UK has demonstrated that half of the cases for common cold in UK are actually Omicron. That is a very, very interesting situation. And that means UK, with all of their caution and all of their care, can start preparing towards an end of the situation. That's what I hope and I think is happening. Now, the second part is the South Africa part. And I shared a study yesterday from South Africa about the Omicron versus Delta and the hospitalizations and severity, in which there was an interesting comment there, and that is that once a patient is hospitalized, regardless of Omicron or Delta, their severity progress is the same. And I was curious for how their progress is the same. And I did some more data digging and I did some mechanism analysis, and I wanted to share with you. And this is actually a good news as well. So let's start with this. I hope that you're all having a good time. So this is the South Africa's Omicron infection wave is almost over. It is the shortest and the fastest infection wave they had. The question in my mind is, if this wave is actually now over, is South Africa actually done now? Has Omicron wiped out Delta from the society? And number one, and number two, has it given protection to whoever it was going to give protection to? So we'll see. Number three, maybe it would now percolate in the society as just common cold and keep moving forward. Will the society now be vulnerable to Delta coming from outside? Will Omicron continue to wipe out the Delta that would be coming in from outside? So we'll see. The second part is that half of the UK cases are common cold cases. I would show you the references right away, but once again, I want to be fast today so I can respect your time and your um, and thank you very much for being with me at this time. This is the latest confirmed cases of COVID-19 in South Africa. All these links are in the description. This is Hutang province in South Africa. And if you see here, we saw when we started looking at this together, this number of new cases started going up from 2-300 all the way to 11-12,000, and now it is back to 421, and the number of deaths are 27. So if you see here, this is the fourth wave, and that wave is almost over. And if you see this part, I think this is the most interesting part, and that is that even after the hospital admissions, the severity, ventilation, deaths are still low. It is still happening, but lower. So we'll look at the reason. Then this is the South Africa's dashboard. This is the dashboard on John Hopkins. I used the data from John Hopkins for South Africa in my analysis. This is South Africa. The fourth wave is now going down fast. This is so I wanted to show you this number. This chart that we are seeing right now, it was used by many folks who like to fear monger, and they were saying, look, we have 400 times increase in the cases and 600 times increase in the cases, and at one time 1649% increase in cases. But now if you see, the increase in cases is now about 199, 133%. I saw 99 this morning as well. So this has really come down back, almost double the cases at this time, and hopefully it would continue to go down. Then this is the number of deaths. So if you see that there is actually a trend upwards in deaths. So deaths have become almost double as compared to in the beginning of the month. So are these the deaths that are because of the last weeks of November with Omicron and early part of December? We will have to see. And I did one more analysis on the hospitalization and death. I think that the number is not just the 4 weeks, it has gone down to 2 to 3 weeks since the Delta. So, anyways, until they come back and give us the actual data to say this many number of people with Omicron and this many hospitalized and this many died, we everything else is a conjecture. So I am using the data from the South African study where they were able to say this many number of Omicron patients and then this many number of hospitalizations out of them. They fell short of two things, and again, this is what they did. It's not, I'm not blaming them. One, they did not declare the deaths, and maybe there are no deaths from Omicron yet. And the second is they did not talk about vaccination. They actually said in their study that we do not have complete data for vaccination, so we are not able to tell vaccinated versus non-vaccinated. So this is the references. Now, what I want to discuss is the following thing, and I'm going to go over that in my illustrations. In the South Africa, in this study, that said number of hospitalizations because of Omicron are reduced. However, once somebody is in the hospital, the progression of the disease is similar to Delta. But Delta and Omicron, so read here, this is really important. Compared to earlier Delta, so there is a Delta today, and Omicron, almost today's Delta is almost wiped out. But let's say it is there in November. Compared to earlier Delta, that is May, June, July timeframe, after controlling for factors associated with severe disease, SGTF infected individuals had a lower odds of severe disease, 0.3%. That means 70% reduction of Omicron compared to earlier Delta. Number one. Number two, there is an inference here. That inference is, look at this part. Once hospitalized, risk of severe disease was similar for Omicron and Delta, SGTF and non-SGTF. That means I can reread the sentence above, this green sentence, and say, because current Delta and Omicron's progression is the same inside the hospital, then I can read this sentence as compared to earlier Delta infections. After controlling for factors associated with severe disease, current Delta infection individuals had a lower odds of severe disease, and that is also by 70% lower. Why am I saying that? Because down here in the red, they are saying that current Delta and current Omicron have similar progression. So then the thinking should be for all of us, and this is what I was kind of continuing to figure out what is happening, is why is current Delta and current Omicron equal, number one, and number two, what is the reason for them to be less severe? So I think reason for them to be less severe in the hospital makes sense, vaccinations, previous infection, and all younger population and so on. So now let's look at this data. So what is the good news here? The good news is Omicron may have the similar behavior in the hospital, but Omicron does not put a lot of people in the hospital. That is the important thing. And the question is, why is that happening? And I'm going to answer that as well. So let's go to the presentation here. So Omicron B1529. And this is a quick drawing that I did today. So big P is saying to little o, why are you doing this to me, bro? You are making milking hard. So now, daily new cases in South Africa. If you see here, this is the fourth wave, almost over. Earlier Delta. So this is an important one. Please, from this presentation, from this slide, just take one thing with you, and that is this is June to July, and the data for the data crunchers. Here is the data Excel sheet which I downloaded from Johns Hopkins. This is the data. So the data is new cases in June to July would be Delta, right? 781,837. Out of them, 96,623 were hospitalized. So that is 12.35% hospitalization. So please keep this in your mind. Out of 100 people getting infected, 12.3 or 12.4 are ending up in the hospital. Then 15,507 died. And what I did not do was, I didn't do, this is a more crude look for deaths, because I didn't do the exact uh, shifting of the frame to say June's deaths in July and July's deaths in August. I just took the total deaths during this time. So that means this number is going to be different. But what I saw was that the numbers next and number before, if you stay within the spike, they were similar. So, anyways, that's 1.98% of total cases and 16% of admitted to hospital. Once again, there is, this number is going to be different. So from here, I think instead of deaths, I would just like to take one number from here, and that is number 12.35% of the cases from earlier Delta would end up in the hospital. Good. Now I'm going to go to the next one. Here is the data from October and December. This is John Hopkins. Again, this data does not discriminate between Delta or Omicron, just generally what is the trend at this time in South Africa. And that trend is not all attributable to Omicron's changes, it is also the prevalence of immunity and all other factors. So, October, cases were 19,444, deaths were 1,551, that is 7.97%. In December, cases are 406,210, deaths 673, percentage is 0.16. But as I think you know and I know, that we will actually have to look at January to actually figure out December's outcomes. So just leave this for a second. This is a crude information that is in front of us. I'm going to go back for this one for a second. 12.35. Now let's go here. This is an important one. And this number is coming from that study that I showed you. So this is not incorrect number crunching, because this is the data coming from the study where they knew who is Omicron and who is not Omicron because they were testing them. Here, Omicron cases, this is from October to 30th November. Omicron cases 10,547, hospitalizations 261, that percentage is 2.5%. So this is important to keep in mind. Now we just saw 12.35% by Delta. 100 people get infected by Delta, 12.35 end up in the hospital. Now we are seeing Omicron, if 100 people get infected, 2.5 end up in the hospital. Now late Delta, I'm also taking this number from the study. This is not my number crunched. Late Delta, in the same duration, October to November, that is why I'm calling it late Delta. Cases 948, hospitalizations 121, percentage 12.8%. Can you see that the Delta is still the same as previous Delta? The only thing is this Delta is getting less chances to cause infections because Omicron is taking over. And I think if you go back before Omicron, you would see that Delta would still be the same Delta. Maybe the number of cases would reduce because people are protected and they are vaccinated, they have previous infections, they are, doing whatever social behaviors they could to protect themselves. So all those factors which are present, whatever those factors are. So early Delta and late Delta, from 100 cases to hospitalization percentage is the same. But Omicron's percentage to put people in the hospital is less. So that is where I would like to generate this question in your mind. Why? Why is it that Omicron is putting less people in the hospital versus Delta of today, which is putting people in the hospital with the same percentage? Now we can say the rate is lower because of protections built up in the society. So I want to continue now. So here is the big data that I have put together. So let me actually show it to you on my drawing pad so I can circle various parts. So I'm going to start now from wild type, Wuhan variant, original ancestor. Last year, if you see studies from June, July timeframe, last year, out of 100 people who will become sick or get infected, there used to be about 20 that would end up in the hospital. So 20%. Out of them, severity was um, defined differently in every society or every country. So I left the society severity out. The death rate was anywhere from 3% to 5-6% in some countries and some communities. It was more, in some it was less. Some with vitamin D it was less, and so on. So there was a variation per society and community and demography. But the studies that I presented last year, these studies showed this number. So out of 100, 3 to 5% would die. That was with the Wuhan or original ancestral variant. Then came Delta. So, of course, there were others. I left them out. I went to Delta. Then came Delta. Now, Delta, I just showed you the numbers. Out of 100 people, early Delta, out of 100 people who become ill or sick with early Delta, 12.3 would end up in the hospital. Why not 20? Because at the time of 20, there was no protection in the society. We didn't know how to uh, conduct ourselves with this virus. We did not know how to protect ourselves. There are so many methods of protection, and we didn't know at that time all of them. So now there is protection. So there was no protection in the beginning. Now there was protection with Delta, but less protection. People were still, some are still getting vaccinated, some are getting their vitamin D levels up, some are learning how to, stay away and all that. So 12.3% became the hospitalization. So reduced compared to wild type. And the data that I saw, that is my crude data, 2 deaths. This is South Africa's data. I wanted to take South Africa's data to stay within the South Africa's frame. This data still may be different. So 2% with early Delta. Good. This Delta was putting less people in the hospital because protection was building up. Then late Delta, the data from that study. Now I told you that that study does not have the death data, so I just left it out instead of trying to extrapolate it. 100 people, according to this study from South Africa, 100 people that become infected with Delta, 12.8% end up in the hospital. So that is almost the same as the previous Delta that I calculated. So early Delta, late Delta, the behavior is the same. Why? Because the behavior, other than the social factors, our immune system's response and the virus's toxicity to us, they are important factors as well. And that is what is important to note today. So I can say that early Delta and late Delta were similarly toxic to us. However, now more people are protected than before, but, and that may be the reason for the cases to go down, but once it is Delta, its propensity for severity is the same. The immune response is the similar in early and late Delta. And I want to talk about this in a second. Let's go to Omicron for a second. Now, 100 people, this is coming from the study, 100 people becoming infected. Out of them, 2.5 are ending up in the hospital. Now, this could not just be the protection in the society. Why? Because in the same time, when you look at Delta, it is also experiencing the same protection in people, whatever that protection is. But Delta, late Delta, is able to put more people in hospital compared to Omicron. So that means Omicron has more factor, and that factor, before people end up in the hospital, is Omicron's mutations, immune escape. So as much as we keep saying that, hey, the immune escape has happened, the immune evasion has happened, and many people are using that as something really bad has happened. Look, that immune escape is also reducing our and immune system's behavior, the harsher response. It is bugging our system less, it is bothering it less. Because of that, we are putting less, or it is putting less people in the hospital. Because in the same society, when you're putting Delta and Omicron side to side, they have the same hurdles to infect. People's vaccination rate are the same, people's previous infections are the same, people's behaviors, everything is the same. This is South African society, the same people who are ending up in hospitals. Delta is getting more people in the hospital. Omicron is not. So protections are the same. The difference is in Omicron's capability to cause immune response. That means it is binding with our immune system lesser and it is causing less response. Now, I'm going to go to, so I hope that part is understandable, that from the outpatient ambulatory state to the hospital, Omicron has become milder. Now, once in the hospital, we keep hearing this from UK, from South Africa. Once you're in the hospital, a patient with Omicron has a similar behavior with Delta. Do you know why? Because once in the hospital, one of the major reason for further progression is not just the virus, but the cytokine storm. And cytokine storm, if somebody ends up in a hospital, that means the virus was able to cause enough damage and immune response that they became severe enough to go to the hospital. Good news once again, that a majority is still with Omicron able to 1 or 2 days later come out. So again, not as pokey as before. However, if we just take this on the face value, as the researchers say, that once somebody is in the hospital, their progression is the same. That progression from this study, I want to show you this study for a second. If you see here, read this part. Compared to earlier Delta infection, after controlling the factors associated with severe disease, SGTF infected Omicron individuals had a lower odds of severe disease, and how lower? Adjusted ratio is 0.3, which is 70% lower. And the confidence interval is 0.2 to 0.5. That means 50% to 80% lower. So I'm just going to take 70%. 70% lower. If somebody is in the hospital, their progression to severity is 70% lower. Two reasons. One is that people are generally protected, the age differences, all of those things would matter. This is where you hear that, hey, vaccines would help with the severe disease. You would also hear the previous infection should help that too, although this news is less often used. Plus, the Delta itself is milder too. However, in the hospital, now that a person is sort of tending towards a cytokine storm, the cytokine storm, if it is occurring for Delta and for Omicron, it is the same. So this 70% lower is attributable not to people and not to Omicron only, but also to the protections. So that is the basic exploration that I had to do. I'd been sitting and working on this one since the morning. So Omicron's capability, I'm just going to repeat this and then stop. Omicron's capability to bring people to hospital is reduced, fortunate for us, and behavior of a virus. And it is reduced because it has mutated. Omicron once brings someone to the hospital. That means that person is responding with some harsher response. That means that person's immune system has become a partner in causing damage. Then their chances of becoming severe are similar as if Delta had brought them to hospital, because now the body's response is important. And body's response doesn't care much once somebody is in the hospital that was it Omicron or Delta. Body's response helped before going to the hospital. Overall, for all variants, I'm saying Delta and Omicron as all, for all variants, the severity is reduced because of the protections that are building. So if I look at this data, I'm going to stop now for this one. If I look at this data, this tells me that the South Africa's, I'm just going to my South Africa's wave is over, number one. Number two, I think in the coming month, we would see the result of the wave. I hope not many people die. I hope nobody dies. But the result of that we would see now as we are seeing the death rate changing. But the behavior was fascinating for me to understand. So that means this virus is going to continue to become more and more outpatient like virus. Okay, so this is that study. I had this yesterday up as well. So just a quick display of that study once more. Now, does it matter? Yes, because number one, it is showing that Omicron is becoming less severe to put people to hospital. And then secondly, the protections that are built in the society are now helping people in the hospital from becoming severe. Now, the question in my mind is 59 million population of South Africa, 3.3 million infections, 5.5%, 90,000 deaths, 0.15% of the total, or 2.7% of the infected. Is South Africa done? Has Omicron wiped out the Delta and itself burnt out as well, or become more human friendly? Is it done? So we'll see. It's not done yet in terms of done, but the spike has reduced, and let's see if it continues to reduce and go away. Now, the final piece, UK. In the UK, from December 1, 2021 to December 2021, cases of COVID per million population have risen from 634 to 1280, a 101% rise. Remember, in South Africa, it went from 100%, 200, 300, up to, I just showed you, 1634% rise. While total new deaths from COVID have actually reduced from 1.79 to 1.69. Almost the similar, didn't increase. So here is what I wanted to discuss. In UK, number of cases have doubled, but number of deaths have not in correspondence doubled. That means if the number of deaths have stayed the same, and the cases have doubled, then that is a 50% reduction in the deaths. And this is the data coming from. So you have this link here, and this link is in the description as well. Then the second part, which is interesting, is the latest UK Zoe COVID study, an app-based study to support COVID research. News is encouraging, with 1 in 2 colds actually being Omicron infections. So half of the common colds are Omicron infections. So that is the discussion. I think that we are reaching a point to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm very, very hesitant to say this is over, because I said that last time as well, and I was totally wrong. So I don't want to open my mouth. At the same time, I pray that this is the end of it. So, how is everyone doing? How are your Christmas preparations going on? Okay, very good. So I am not going to keep you more. So Christmas Eve dinners are up. So have a good time. On the way out, do me a favor, please like, subscribe, and share. If you just hit like, that is good enough as well. And if you would like to support this work, there are links in the description. You can buy me a coffee, or you can become a patron, or you can use PayPal. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, enjoy. And I would hopefully not talk with you again today. But if there is something interesting, then today, tomorrow we'll talk again. Thank you. Enjoy. Bye bye.